Hey guys, this is Comic Uno episode 175, and this is a show where I review all the comics I read this week in one show. So let's get started. We go worst pick of the week to best pick of the week and everything in between. This week I had a pretty average haul for myself, 21 comics. So we are starting with number 21, what was worst pick of the week for me this week. And this wasn't a horrible book, just something I just couldn't get into, and that was Occupy Avengers issue 2. I actually really enjoyed issue 1, but here it focused more on Red Wolf and the villains that weren't so interesting in issue 1 come back here. Hydro Man was here. I just felt like it was very fillerish for what it was. And it's only the second issue, so to feel fillerish in the second issue is kind of weird. And they're like, hey, let's join together and travel the world. So I think I might drop this book, even though I did like issue 1. I think the art was good. I just don't really care for the directions going in, and I think issue 2 kind of proved that for me. So Occupy Avengers issue 2 gets 2 stars. I wasn't a big fan of this one. But moving on to number 20, which is Raven issue 4, a book I also feel upset that this is so low, because I do like Raven, and this is nothing against the miniseries. I just think it was the issue itself. Unless you're a hardcore Raven fan, I personally couldn't feel attached to it. I feel like it was a lot of just, talking, not exposition, just a lot talking about the same thing we already knew, of like Raven and her feelings of her abilities and her father is very repetitive of stuff we've already gotten with the book. And then what I liked about the book is the supporting characters, and I feel like they're kind of pushed away, and maybe because that's Raven's personality too. And the art's good, it fits the book. It's like not my favorite style of art. I do think it's a bit abstract, but I do think it fits the title well. I just thought this could have been a little bit of a faster paced issue. Sorry, good talk right there. I kind of wish it was faster paced, and yeah, I just felt like this was more of a filler issue than anything. And again, this is nothing against a miniseries. I just think this issue could have easily been cut out, or at least shortened. I don't think they needed to take the whole issue to get to this point, but I think hardcore Raven fans will enjoy the inner monologue of Raven. So I gave this 2 stars, and that was number 20. Moving on to number 19, a book I'm very upset to see this low, because it's definitely one of the bigger books that came out this week, and that was Justice League vs. Suicide Squad issue 1. I just felt like I knew everything going into it. That was the problem. And I'm actually not currently reading either of these books. Sadly, not reading Justice League because I just think it's very mediocre. And I'm not reading Suicide Squad because I've never been the biggest fan. Like, I'll see the movie, whatever. I like Harley, but not enough to pick up an ongoing for Suicide Squad. So that's why I was excited for this, because it kind of gives you these 2 groups in a miniseries type event, and it's an event. So you think more is going to happen, but it's just pretty much saying, hey, Amanda Waller does what she does, or does what she wants, really, which is something we already know about Amanda Waller. Justice League versus Suicide Squad in this. So if you wanted that fight, it happens, and the art's great. The art is good for this book. And then we get to see, what's his name? Maxwell Lord in this issue. But we knew that already, because it was already revealed that Maxwell Lord would be the big villain of the story. So I think a lot of it was because it was revealed previously, I didn't have as much tension. Also because I don't really care about Maxwell Lord that much. But yeah, I just felt like they could have done a lot more to surprise us, to hook us for our first issue. I will pick up issue 2, see where it goes, because I'm excited for JLA, which is the big reason why I picked this up, was because this event is leading into that book. But yeah, I was pretty disappointed with this one. I think it's kind of skippable, because you kind of knew everything going into it already. So Justice League vs. Suicide Squad issue 1 gets 2 stars, and that is number 19. Moving on to number 18, which is been a disappointing arc for me so far. Even though I've liked issues here, I just like the other arc a little bit more, and that is Batman issue 13, I Am Bane. So this issue, I think, is also easily skippable. I mean, you get into the ventriloquist kind of brain a little bit, psycho pirate you learn a little bit more about, but not enough to cover a whole issue. It's really Batman and Catwoman is escaping from Bane, and Batman and Bane versing each other, but it's kind of very similar to stuff we've seen before. It's, I'm going to break your back. No, I'm going to break your back. And that's kind of how it ends. So I want a little bit more from the story. I think it's such a slow burn. I'm trying to think of, yeah, and then Bane's, he'll come back, don't worry. But it looks like Batman and Catwoman's going to be the, I guess, core or the spotlight for next issue, or at least both their relationships, because we've seen them separate a lot, so now it looks like we're finally going to see them together dealing with their stuff. But yeah, this is just a slower issue for me. I love the art though. It's just, I like the I Am Gotham arc so much that I Am Bane has been a little disappointing for me. So Batman issue 13 gets 2.5 stars, and that was number 18. Moving on to number 17, a book I have fun with, but I feel for this arc I just haven't been enjoying. And that is Patsy Walker, aka Hellcat, issue 13. So I like the all-ages feel to this book, but sometimes it's a little bit too ridiculous for me. Like, I think Black Cat is only in this arc because she has Cat in her name, and then Hellcat has Cat in her name, and they're fighting each other. So, and it's a little bit too long-winded, this story arc, just because they have the same name. But parts I liked with this issue, I actually surprisingly liked Jubilee. I think it kind of fits the silliness of this book, because it's supposed to be silly. It's like all ages fun book. And I liked Jubilee, you know, being addicted to her blood and whatever. I thought that was a fun scene, but the Black Cat thing, she's not the greatest villain here. And I think the only series that's gotten her right so far as a villain, at least recently, has been Silk, and it's been hard to top that. So I think it's ridiculous fun, this book, but I don't really like the story right now, so Patsy Walker, aka Hellcat, issue 13 gets 2.5 stars. Also, the artwork, I think, even for cartoony style artwork, could be a little bit more detailed. So that was number 17. Moving on to number 16, sad to see this low, but I think we waited way too long for this book for a filler issue, and that was Silver Surfer issue 8, which was it's a filler issue of Silver Surfer and Dawn talking about a friend they had to these like little stars, I guess you could call them. Yeah, the biggest new star. They're like little stars or whatever they are. They're creatures, and they're telling a story to them, and that's pretty much the issue. So I think this was easily skippable, and it's sad because we waited a long time for this issue Silver Surfer to come out. I don't know how many months, but it's been a couple. So yeah, it was a bit fillerish, but it was a okay issue. So I'll give Silver Surfer issue 8 3 stars. I do really like the artwork, and the opener was pretty good with Dawn and Norrin. Moving on to number 15, a book that I'm debating if I want to continue, because I just feel like this is not a totally necessary book going into the next volume of this series, and that's Injustice Ground Zero issue 2. If you're a hardcore Harley fan, I think you should get it. I love Harley in Injustice. I think she's the best character, but putting the spotlight on her, I don't know if it was the best idea. I think she's a better supporting character in Injustice when you get her in bursts. You know, you don't get her all the time. I like the jokes, though. I like that she treats her henchmen as people, and she's like, thinks this henchman, Gary, dies, and then he ends up not dying. And then you learn that his name wasn't Gary the whole time. Definitely the best part of the issue was that. It's a bit wordy for what the book is, though. I feel like it could be it could get to the point a little bit more, but the art's good. I give it 3 stars. It's not a bad book, but I'm still debating if you really need to pick up this issue or really this series in general. So I'm going to see where it goes, but I don't know if I'll be sticking around for this one, and I might just wait for the Tom Taylor Injustice to come out. So moving on to number... what are we up to? We're up to number 14, and that is Superman issue 13, which I will say I liked issue 12 a little bit more with this arc with Frankenstein. I think they concentrate a little bit too much on Frankenstein here. I'm like, oh, alright, well, I'm not reading this book for Frankenstein's love triangle or romance arc, but I like Lois and Superman and the parallels of their relationship to Frankenstein's relationship, that he knew why he left his wife, or his wife knew why they left each other, and I like that. It had to do with their son, and obviously parallels between Lois and Clark's relationship, but you see Lois and Clark have a stronger relationship than them. So even though it's a little bit of a filler issue, I did like the parallels, and I think overall it's worth picking up, but I did like last issue more. So Superman issue 13 gets 3 stars. Moving on to number 13, which is Green Lanterns issue 13. Another arc that's kind of been taking the slower pace here, where we see a little bit more about Jessica's fears, which obviously we know Jessica's fears by now, so it feels a little repetitive. But we do learn a bit more about the Phantom Ring and, you know, our villain and how he's dealing with these emotions. Like I said, it's a bit of a slower issue, but you definitely get some good story here. And I like that Boz and Jessica want to help him out. Like, it's not like they want to defeat him or anything. They understand. So I enjoyed that aspect. And now he's, like, exploding with emotions because he doesn't have a lantern. So there's definitely some interesting mythology here. It's not the best issue of Green Lanterns, but it is worth picking up. It does continue the story somewhat in this issue, but I hope that the book takes a bit of a faster pace because we've been on this arc for a while. And that's kind of the sad thing with these double ship books, is that because they have so many issues, it does take a bit longer to get to the end of the arc, where you do have some, I feel like, unnecessary story. So Green Lanterns issue 13 gets 3 stars. So now we're moving on to number 12, which is Gamora Issue 1, which I'm hoping is a mini-series. I hope it's like a stealth mini-series, which Marvel loves doing. I just wish they announced mini-series. Just say, alright, it's 5 issues. It helps us. They don't do it very often. I think the only one that we know is a mini-series coming up is Bullseye, and that's it. But with these Guardians book, they all kind of feel like mini-series, which I'll get to the other one too, but this is not even a present story. This is Gamora's story before she was in the Guardians, so I don't know how far that can go. But I like the artwork a lot here. I think it fit the tone of the book. There are times where I feel when it's far away, it could be a little bit more detailed in the action. Like this is a good example. And Thanos looks really small throughout the book. That's one complaint I'll have. But overall, the colors make it really jump. And then when you do have those close-ups, it is very detailed. But I like the story because we get to see, you know, Gamora and her relationship with Thanos and her sister. So you definitely have those family dynamics. The actual story of this girl from another race, you know, being, I guess, one of the last princesses or whatever, being, you know, escaping, I think that could have been a little stronger because I felt like that was a little all over the place, but I am excited to see what the next issue brings. But is this really an ongoing material? I don't know. So I kind of wish they either promote this as a mini-series, and if it is ongoing, I don't know how long I'll last on the series, but I will give issue 2 a try. So Gamora issue 1 gets 3.5 stars. Alright, so now we're moving on to number 11, a book I feel like is really good. It's always kind of in the middle of my list, but definitely an enjoyable book, and that is Joyride Issue 8, and that's from Boom Studios. And I would say the biggest problem of this book is that it goes to a lot of different places because they're travelers, but I feel like that takes away from some of the character beats because there's so much always going on. It's like, oh, this is going to explode. No, this is how I feel, because there are a lot more characters introduced too. I feel like it should only be the core 3 characters to have story, because then when you get into the other characters, it gets a little confusing and there's just a lot going on. But the ending really made it for me because we get to see our main, or at least one of the main girls, the captain of the ship, sacrifice herself, and we learn that I think her name is Katrina, or yeah, someone with a C, Katrina, I think it is, with the white pale hair, the princess. She loved her, and I kind of had that vibe. I wasn't sure if they were going with that, and you still don't know if it's romantic love or sisterly love. I think it's romantic love, and I don't think that our main character has died, because you see like this burst of light from her. But I like the emotion. There's a lot of great emotion here through the friendships that they've created, but I do think these emotions are overshadowed by the big, large events that are always happening that they get themselves into. So I think they do try to stick too much into the book, but the emotions are definitely there. So Joyride Issue 8 gets 3.5 stars. Number 10 is Trinity, issue 4. So it's a little lower than usual, but I love the art. I think it's Lupacchino doing the art style, which really works for a Wonder Woman type story. And I like seeing Wonder Woman's point of view, but it does feel a little repetitive from what we're already getting with Wonder Woman, which is a bi-monthly book. So we do get Wonder Woman a lot. And it's hard to, I guess, go up against Rucka's story, which is the exact same story. And then when you get to see small Diana, I'm like, did we need to really see her? So I felt like the Batman and the Superman story are a little bit more powerful than the Wonder Woman story. Also, even the story with Lois and John in Poison Ivy, they could have had a little bit more panel time. I think that could have been more interesting. So Wonder Woman kind of just felt repetitive from what we've been seeing, but not a bad story. It's still a fun story if you're not reading Wonder Woman, but it's a little repetitive for me. Trinity issue 4 gets 3.5 stars for me. Alright, moving on to number 9. Which is Cave Carson has a cybernetic eye. And this book has really surprised me because I don't really like any of the other Young Animal books, but I always look forward to Cave Carson because it is kind of ridiculous and out there, especially with the setting they have. But the characters, I feel, are better characterized, honestly. I feel more attached to them than I do with Shade the Changing Girl, and I don't read Doom Patrol, so I can't tell you about that, or first issue of Mother Panic. I just like the characters more here, and you delve into the relationship of Cave and his daughter a bit more here, and his daughter learning that she's part of this ancient underground civilization, and then she goes there and sees her people dead. So I really enjoyed it. I thought, again, it dug into these characters a little bit more. There are some parts when they get into the other government storyline I didn't really quite care about. I wish they just concentrated on Cave Carson's story, but I do like it, and the artwork fits for the type of story they're telling. So I'm gonna give this story 3.5 stars. And the artwork's a little dark, but I guess it works for the style of story. Number 8 is a book that I've been pleasantly surprised by, and that is Slam, issue 2. And this is kind of a roller derby book, and I like this issue. This is also a story where I think they try to squeeze a little bit too much into it. We get a lot of their lives in this issue, but I liked it. I liked their general story. I kind of wish they focused on the friendship a little bit more, but I think you have to see these characters as individuals before you dig into their friendship and probably their breaking up of their friendship. You're already kind of seeing that in these issues. But I like the characters. I like what they're showing with roller derby life, and the artwork's great by Veronica Fish. So I enjoyed it. Like I said, there's a lot going on in this issue plot-wise, but there's also a lot of interesting character building in this issue. So I'm going to give that 3.5 stars. So now moving on to number 7, which is Star-Lord, issue 1, Star-Lord. So, I felt like this was a little slower of an issue because it's focusing more on how Star-Lord is living life on Earth without knowing anybody, and he tries to hang out with Howard. The Duck doesn't work out. Him and Kitty are on the outs, which is kind of continuity-wise a little confusing because I thought they forgave each other in the last Star-Lord book, but I think it's more that they're both busy, more than, hey, we're not friends anymore. And I like the ending where he gets arrested because superheroes are just not perceived the same way as they were before Civil War II. So it's good to have a somewhat of a tie-in from Civil War II. And I love the art. I mean, the artwork really fits the tone they're going for with Star-Lord. So you got sexy Star-Lord in this book, which I enjoyed. I really like that. And overall, I'll give the issue 3.5 stars. Is it a bit of a slow issue? Yes. I feel like it's a filler issue already in issue 1, but I had fun with it. We get to see Star-Lord's personality shine in this book, and definitely gave me enough to want to pick up the next issue. So I gave that 3.5 stars. Moving on to number 6, which is The Amazing Spider-Man, issue 22. Now, this issue didn't make my top 5, mostly because of the art style. Not a big fan of Comicoli's artwork. I don't like the cheekbones. He makes everything a little bit too bold, like his inking work. I don't really like, so I'm just not a fan of this style of artwork. But overall, I did like the story, even though, you could say this is not a filler issue, it's more of an exposition issue. And you don't have to read this issue, but if you want to learn more about Ben, you should read this issue, and that's what a tie-in should be. It's if you want to learn more about this character, get more out of the story, read this tie-in. But it's not necessary to read for the main event, and like I said, that's what a tie-in should be. So, I enjoyed this issue. I think there's some things that don't really match up with this story, though, that, you know, Ben is making the people that he cloned, you know, take these pills only if he works for them, or they work for him. So that's a little bit like, is he a bad guy? I don't know, but that could go back to the trauma we learned about in this issue that might have changed Ben. So I liked it overall. I gave it a solid 4 stars, and I am excited for Clone Conspiracy issue 4 to see what's up with that. So moving on to number 5, which is Invincible Iron Man issue 2. So I really like this book, and even though I'll say the training montage I think could have been more interesting, there could have been a little bit more banter between Tony and Riri, but I really like the past story, which I'm wondering how that's going to connect to the present more than Riri wants to be a hero. This is why. I do think the friend's death is going to mean something more in the end. I hope it's just not a cliche of, hey, the friend died, and her stepdad died. This is why she's a hero. I do hope that story expands to something else, but I love the art, and I do really like the past story where you get to see the heart of Riri, which is important. Like I said, some of the present story has to be worked on. It should, you know, I wish it was a little bit more interesting, but still, it was Tony and Riri, which was cool. So I'm going to give Invincible Iron Man issue 2 4 stars, and that was number 5. Moving on to number 4, which is Spider-Gwen issue 15, which takes more of a character-driven, I guess, approach of this issue, which we found a lot of these. I kind of wish that the plot would progress a little bit more, but I like this issue because we get to see Matt Murdock as a threatening villain, and exactly why he's a threatening villain, because now he's controlling Gwen. Gwen has now an unlimited power supply, but only if she listens to Matt. So is she going to be the villain that her city believes she is? So I'm very curious about that. And it was nice to see Gwen talk about her father without her father being in front of her in the holidays, because one of these officers come up to her and say, oh, you know, I'm sorry about your dad. And she explains, well, you know, my dad didn't do anything wrong. And then we got a little bit of the Mary Janes, wanted a little bit more. I still love that Mary Jane knows that Gwen is Spider-Woman, and Gwen will be like, no, I'm not going to answer that. And she's more worried about, oh no, I don't have enough supply for my powers. So I hope that comes to a head soon, that she'll, you know, Mary Jane, or at least Mary Jane and Gwen have a conversation, because they definitely need it. It's been building up for a couple of months now, but overall I thought it was a solid issue. I wanted a little bit more from it, but there was a lot of good character moments in this issue. So Spider-Gwen issue 15 gets 4 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, I feel like this is always in my top 5 because it's an awesome book, and that is Archie issue 15. Where we get 2 stories, really. It's Archie learning that he has to be himself, and he throws the party for his parents with the help of his friends, and his friends try to help through this heartbreak, and you learn why he wanted to be Jughead, and Betty, of course, is the one who knows, saying he has heartbreak, and you never have, and he wants to be you because he doesn't want to feel pain anymore. So that was a good part of the story. I will say both these stories in Veronica and Archie do feel a bit separated. That's a bit of a complaint. Kind of wish they weaved them in a little bit better. But it's also Veronica feeling heartache, or feeling a conscience at least, because Veronica, she still is going against the war of Cheryl Blossom, but in the end she does feel guilty, and you see that she's getting more emotions than she would. And now she's going back to Riverdale. She's happy, but Cheryl Blossom is too. So we're going to see how that works out in Riverdale. So I liked it. I thought it was a solid book, and it's definitely a build-up issue to what to expect next with Cheryl coming to Riverdale. So I gave that 4 stars, and that was number 3. Moving on to number 2, a book that I actually dropped and picked up, and I've been really amazed since they moved on to the story arc. I'm probably going to get it printed soon, and that is Nightwing issue 11. And I really like this story. First of all, love the artwork. I think it fits the style of the book very well. And I just like Nightwing a lot here. It's finally Dick being Nightwing, where he's encountering all these, I guess, sidekick villains, and these are all people from his past, and they're trying to be better people. It's kind of like the the loners, or was it, yeah, I think it's the loners from Marvel, where they're all these like D-list superheroes just having this group where they would always talk. And that's now the flip side, where all these D-list villains are having a place to talk and try to be better people. So I enjoyed it. I like this issue a lot, and you want to see Dick make friendships with these people that they used to be enemies with. So I really enjoyed it, and hopefully it continues to be this good, Nightwing. So I gave this 4 stars, and that's number 2. Moving on to my pick of the week, which was kind of an obvious pick of the week for me this week, and that was the Mighty Captain Marvel issue 0. And I'll say, I haven't loved Captain Marvel's story in a little while. I wasn't a big fan of the Alpha Flight story. I just don't really care about Alpha Flight that much, or space stories. So now that they're grounding Captain Marvel again, I really enjoyed this issue. And if you don't know anything about Carol, you learn about her here. I will say they retcon some things, so that might not make people totally happy. But again, I'm not a hardcore Carol fan, so for me, I didn't mind much about the retcon because it didn't really change her character so much. But I really like seeing the story with her family, because they've always been estranged. They don't really talk about it that much in the comics. I think the last time we really got a story with them was the last Miss Marvel series, which is like in 2007 or like 2010. So it's been a couple of years now since we've gotten a story with her family. And I wonder if that's going to mean something for the future of this arc. I hope it's not just something they mention and throw away. I hope the family aspect will come together a little bit more in the future of this arc. But what I like is that it takes the psyche of Carol after the events of Civil War II and dealing with her, she's in the military also, but dealing with trauma of a superhero. You see people die, you're in a war zone pretty much a lot of the times, and they deal with that, especially with Carol's military background. So I like that, and just dealing with Carol's personality. And then you have Jessica and Carol makeup, which was nice. If you've been reading Spider-Woman, that was a good build-up. Artwork is really well done for this book too, and overall just really liked it. And I think this is something you needed when Carol was painted as the villain in Civil War II. You need to humanize her a little bit more and understand why she did the things she did, and you finally do, at least with this issue, and I hope you continue to see that. So the Mighty Captain Marvel issue 0 gets 4.5 stars for me, and that's my pick of the week. Let me know in the comments below, what was your worst pick of the week? What was your pick of the week, and everything in between? This is Comic Uno and Comic Frontline. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys later. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. Don't forget to like my Facebook page. Also, description below, there are links for my comic book, Like Father, Like Daughter, and don't forget to like the Facebook page of Like Father, Like Daughter. I'll see you guys later. Bye.